Hello. Hi, and welcome back to another video of my creative life with Kel Sweetie, where we do all of the creative things. We are in day 2 of Vlogmas, and like I said in the first one, we're winging it. We're gonna see where it kind of takes us. I still need to do the basis of what I do on this channel, which is booktube things and crafting things. And with that being said, I still have not released my wrap-up video or my December TBR video. So it's part of me saying, let's do 2 for 1? Yes. It's part of me saying that's not a good idea? Probably. But we're gonna see where it takes us. I am standing in my book corner, and I am standing in my book corner instead of sitting in it, mainly because I didn't want to move the chair into this corner. I wanted to get these beautiful lights in here, which you guys never see that when I'm sitting in my chair. And it's a vlog, so I can do whatever I want. I am very proud of this corner. My records and everything. It's great. So I'm going to do a review, well, not a review, but a wrap-up of what I read in November. It was a quality reading month. Almost everything I read was either 5 stars or 4 stars. We're winging it. We're really winging it here. Let's start on the wrap-up. The first book that I read last month was Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. I've been meaning to read this book since beginning of last year, I feel like. Everybody in the world was talking about this book, how good it was on every list. I think it won the Goodreads awards. I don't know. Everybody wanted it. I couldn't find it in stores. That's how many people wanted to read this book. I finally found it. It was part of the Goodreads best horror and thriller list, which all these books are from. Essentially, that list shaped my November because I didn't get to any other books with holiday stuff and everything. I don't think this should have been on that list. I don't think that Our Wives Under the Sea should even be in the horror section because it's not a horror. I don't think anything about it reads as a horror. It reads more as a suspenseful romance, which is so weird to put together, but that's how this reads, as a suspenseful romance. One of them gets lost at sea while she does a deep sea research mission. They say that she's declared dead. She resurfaces, but she's different. That's all I can kind of tell you if you want to read this book. But basically, it's from the point of view of the partner who was lost at sea and what happened while she was down there. And the other one is the point of view of present and what she's going through dealing with her partner being different. I gave this 4 stars. I gave it 4 stars because, one, it was not what it kind of was marketed as, which was this horror. There was nothing about this that was horrific, in my opinion, or was scary. I mean, I think if you have like a fear of like the deep sea and what is at sea, this is probably a terrifying book for you. But I don't like, it scares me, but it doesn't terrify me. You know, it's not like, you know, I would have to go to the ocean in order to be terrified by that. And considering most of the time I'm not near the ocean, I'm not usually freaked out by it as much as like spiders or serial killers, you know, that can just walk through the door one day. So that's first and foremost. Secondly, I didn't care for the dual point of view. I didn't care about what the partner went through while she was down in the ocean. To be honest, that part should have been the more horrific part, or like the more exciting claustrophobia. If claustrophobia is your thing, this will probably scare you. It kind of came off as boring, and it left more questions than answers. The partner who is telling her story, Mary, she's telling her story about Leah. That's her partner's name. It's all coming back to me. This was at the beginning of November. Let me get to it. Mary is talking about dealing with how Leah has changed and reflecting on the relationship and memories from their relationship, what to do next. I loved her parts. Every single part where it was Miri, I loved it because what it felt like and what I feel like this book is an allegory for, because we all know that horror is not just horror. It has social text in it. And that's what I love about horror, is this is an allegory for being in a relationship with somebody with depression. I've not looked this up. I've not looked up evidence to prove this, but I am positive that Julia Armfield wrote this book to create some sort of allegory about being in a relationship with somebody with depression. And in that sense, it made it absolutely gorgeous to read. Honestly, if we could have taken out all of Leah's portions, got none of Leah's portions, and this was a novella, like even shorter than this, 5-star read. Easily a 5-star read for me. Ending of this, when Leah is resurfacing, it's from her point of view of her resurface. Leah is not religious. She does not believe in any god of a religious sort, but as she is lifting out of the water, all she can see and who she is praying to is not a god, but Miri. And there's something really beautiful about the idea that you can love somebody so much that you have more faith in them than you do anything else in this world. There is something so romantic about that. And on the flip side of that, it is also romantic and heartbreaking romance at that. To know that that person who is going through their depression, from the allegory standpoint that I think that this book bases itself on, could absolutely love you so much, and that is the reason why they're even still here, but they cannot love you. Somebody cannot love you enough for themselves. Gorgeous. Absolute. I teared up, but gorgeous book. Just don't go into reading it like it's a horror, because it's not. The next book I read was also another book that everybody was reading and telling you to read, and it's the best book ever, and that is T. Kingfisher's What Moves the Dead. I said, finally, I'm gonna pick it up. This cover, that's a great cover, and it was short. This book is about 150 pages. If I would have read this book sooner and I had not watched The Last of Us earlier this year, this book easily 5 stars. I would have gotten the hype. I would have told the praises. I would have told everybody. I'm afraid of fungi now. If I wasn't before from watching Last of Us, I definitely am now. Like, that stuff's scary. We should really be afraid that it could do things that it can scientifically do, and it really just chooses not to. It's like birds. If you ever seen Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, me and my partner have this conversation all the time, because he watched The Birds and somehow was not freaked out. And I'm like, why aren't you freaked out by that? He's like, it's just a bunch of birds. I'm like, no, it's a possibility that they could just decide, let's go kill everybody, and it'd be completely possible to do so, and they choose not to. Like, they're like, no, we'll leave them alone. We don't need to. That's what this book gives you fear of, is that there's something that could easily, just as easily as breathing, infect your body, and it is no longer yours. That's crazy. That's a crazy thing. The main character, Alex Easton, is visiting a childhood friend. She's apparently sick. Her brother is sick in the head. He's not great. That's why, like, when I picked up this book, I really didn't know what it was going to be in it, is because it is very difficult to even explain this book without giving away what the book's about to anybody. Now I understand why so many booktubers kind of say that. It has to do with fungus. It has to do with some crazy rabbits and this is another water terror. There's a lake. This lake is scary. We love a book this thick that doesn't waste our time. And that was this. It was great. The next book that I read last month, I think might possibly be one of my favorite reads of the year. This next book, Dead Silence, amazing book. Such a good book. It combines, I think the reason why I was almost like, this is my favorite book of the year, is that it combined horror, thriller, a mystery, a sci-fi, all of my favorite genres into one book. It was, I keep on telling people this, the history of the Titanic became friends with the storyline of The Shining, and they made a baby with Interstellar, and you'd have Dead Silence. Essentially, a crew comes across a luxury space liner that has been missing for 7 years. it was proclaimed dead and gone and lost out in space. They end up coming across it. Apparently, this is in a dystopian future, and it's essentially pirate rules. You find it, you can keep it, and anything on it, but you have to bring back proof of its existence and everything. This is a big deal because the luxury space liner was made when people still did luxury things like gold faucets and things like that. So they're just like, we're rich. This is great. Of course, it's not. And they go onto the ship and they find what happened. No one ever said what happened to that ship when it was lost, and they find out what happened. And I mean, basically from the beginning, this isn't ruining it for anybody. The captain of the ship is the only one who basically survives. And it's one of these stories where you're meeting in the middle at one point, where she's telling the story currently from her state of mind, while you're also going back and forth to what was happening. Silence. Amazing. If you love horror and you love sci-fi, I highly, highly, highly recommend you read this book. It was just so good. I moved through it so quickly. I was so excited to read it. I would be upset when I had to turn it off. I really absolutely love this book, and I get why it's in some people's top favorites. The last book that I read last month was The Last House on Needless Street. I feel like I've talked about this a little bit in my last Vlogmas video just a little bit, but I don't think that this one should necessarily, it's in horror, but this is another one where when you finish it, I'm not certain. It's horror because of the possibility that these things happen and that these things are very real and people live in these conditions. And that, sure, at the end and the reveal of things and even how it's written, it's quite scary because you're sitting there and it's bleak. It's very, very bleak. I will say that it's a horror, but once you get to the end, you realize that the root and the heart of the story isn't a horror, it's social commentary. I am still thinking about this book because the mental disorder that is in this book, there's not enough research about it still. It's even been renamed multiple times, and it gets confused with another mental disorder, which caused me actually to do some research. And in that small research I did, it's just wild that there is like 1%, even 1% of the population that is living with this mental disorder, and that they live their lives the way this book is written, disjointed and constantly trying to put together the pieces of their own lives. I will say that I kind of peaked because I was kind of like, I already figured out what the story is. And I got through that about halfway through. I was like, I got what the story is. And I feel like any other horror reader or mystery or thriller reader, when we hear like, you think you're gonna know the story, but you've never heard this one or whatever, we like take that as, okay, that's a challenge. I'll get the story right before we get to the end and everything. And while I think that I might have gotten what was kind of happening physically, there is nothing to prepare you really, unless you're really well read on mental health. There is nothing to really give you what the truth is. And I think that that would have been a better way to market this book. I feel like it's not marketed well in the sense of like, you think you know the story, but you have no idea. This story is about a serial killer, this, that, and the other. And it is. All those things are right, but they're kind of double talking. Really, this, you don't know the truth is what should be said, not you don't know the story or something along those lines. I feel like I'm trying to not give so much away of what the book is, because it's not that the ending is shocking. Like, I was expecting to read this book and be shocked like at the end of the plot, where I literally gasped because I did not see the ending coming whatsoever, but rather I was like, oh, that's how we got here, or that's what was really happening this entire time. I only figured out a portion of it. Yeah, and there's a part of this, that the ending of this story, that's both, depending on who you are as a person, is either extremely bleak or extremely hopeful. And I think that Katrina Ward tried to end it that way because she did not want anybody who read this to read it like you know, this disorder is a charity case, especially considering this trope of a disorder is used a lot in horror, to a point where it's even disrespectful because there is not enough, it's not well-rounded. I feel like I said a lot without saying nothing, and that's this book, but like not in a way of like you don't want to read it, but more so like I cannot, if I explain to you what the book is really about, it will ruin it for you. There's a cat's point of view in here. That was enough to pull me in. That was enough to pull me in. Really recommend the audiobook for you to listen to read with and everything, but I also really recommend you to pick up the actual book because the afterword by Katrina Ward isn't in the audiobook, and the afterword was truly like, it's really what kind of informed me a bit more to be like, wow, that's amazing, like what this book is about. And I think also Katrina Ward put it in there too because she really wanted it to be known. She wasn't using this disorder as a trope as some very popular movies, horror movies, and books and things and suspense thrillers and everything use all the time. She really wanted to make it clear that she was really researching and writing about this because to bring more like awareness to it. Pick up The Last House on Neal Street. Now, it does have a slow build. It is slow. If you get through the first 20% of it, you're basically hooked. And it kind of, by the time you're at 50%, it's moving. It's a really great book. I had a great time reading it. Okay, decided to also put my December TBR in here. And that is because I do not have a set TBR for December. And I felt like if I put that in another video, it was gonna be disappointment. So I figured I'd just put this on the tail end of what I'm putting in this video. Every December, as a mood reader, because that's really what I am, I may plan out my TBR and everything, but at the end of the day, if I don't want to read it, I'm not gonna read it. There are 3 books here that got DNF this year, and they're put this way because actually I had 4 DNFs this year. These will not get read this year. This was the year of being comfortable with the DNF. Now, this was also the year of being comfortable with not finishing a challenge you've given yourself. And that is the series of unfortunate events series that I gave myself. I got this for Christmas from my wonderful partner last year. He got me all of them. He got me all of the books in the series. And they're hardcover. It's amazing. It's sitting here next to my Harry Potter books. When I was a kid, I loved the images in this book so much. Even now, I wish I drew like HellQuest. Now, being older, I can see what these books actually were supposed to do, and they're supposed to show you children who may not be doing good in school or life, what they may be going through, and they're allegories and extreme allegories at that for what they could be going through in life. And that's interesting. Love that. But they're starting to get outrageous. They're starting to get outrageous to the point where it's just not making, I mean, look at this. She's scaling an elevator with neckties. And I get it, these are middle grade books, but I'm just a little bored. And I'm on 6. I have 7 more to go. There are 13. I'm hoping that maybe I can knock out some of these, but I will not finish the entire series this year. I know that already. I'm not setting that expectation for myself, but I would like for one day during my break to just read nothing but these books and see how many I can get through. I'm just telling you what my hopes are, because that's all December is hopes. Because really, I spend every December, because this happened last year, basically anything that is still in my physical TBR, let's read it. Let's knock it out so that come January, I can buy books again. Because I get to this point where I've bought these books and they've not been read, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, if I don't read them now, I'm gonna get into next year and I'm gonna wanna buy more books, and I still have these books sitting on my shelf. So this is where we're at. That's my first hope. My first hope is to do a 24-hour readathon or something like that during Vlogmas and knock out at least like maybe 3 more of these books. This is my December hope list, not my hope to be read list. That's what it is. Another thing of my hopes is I thrifted a good amount of books 2 months ago. I haven't read them. So the hope is that I can dwindle this down. I'm gonna be honest with you, I am not too excited to read The Other Black Girl. Like, I'm just not being like, I have to read that. So I don't have the plans to really read it. It's gonna be with me in January, to be honest. Moving forward, there's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Found this amazing cover. Look at that. Isn't that great? And then the Wonka movie is coming out, which looks weird. But this is a great cover. And I've never read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I'm positive it will probably be a little weird. These illustrations in here are amazing. They're line illustrations. Look at this. This is so good. Can you see that? Let me see here. I think I want to read it before the year is up because I started off the year reading both Fantastic Mr. Fox and Matilda by Roald Dahl. While Fantastic Mr. Fox is kind of let down because I absolutely am in love with the movie, and the book is a little of a flat note compared to the movie, which is crazy. And I absolutely loved Matilda growing up. I was obsessed with Matilda, obviously. The book itself, again, was not as good as the movie. It was good, but it just wasn't as good as the movie. If anything, I think the only part of it that was actually really better was Miss Honey somehow, because she just seemed more real. So I thought I'd go for the trifecta and read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory so I can say I basically read the trifecta of Roald Dahl books. So I might read this. This is really short. That's officially on my December TBR. HTBR. That's what we're calling this. Right now, I am reading Becky Chambers. I am reading the Becky Chambers novel that everybody's losing their mind over. They have been losing their mind over, and that's The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. Somebody started this, got about a third of the way through, and said it wasn't for them. It's basically a brand new novel. I saw it. I'd been wanting to read it, but I hadn't been wanting to read it enough to really pay money to buy it because of it being described as a cozy sci-fi, and I am not cozy. I don't really like cozy. I found that out when I read Under the Whispering Door, which everybody was in love with, and I was bored. It took me forever to get through that book, and once I finished reading it, I was like, why? Why do we do that? Did we do that on purpose? Is there a reason for that? All that to say, I'm not certain, but this is definitely on my December HTBR. I love that I've said this. I've made this word. I've made this acronym. I think 10%. I'm about an hour and 30 into the audiobook. I think I love it. I think I very much like it. I don't love it yet. I like it a lot. I thought I'd be bored, but the characters are actually interesting. I think Under the Whispering Door, when I was reading it, the characters weren't interesting enough for me, except for the grandpa. The grandpa was hilarious. All of the characters seem great so far. They seem great. I literally smiled. I've caught myself. I smiled in the car listening on the right way home while I was listening to this audiobook, and I caught myself smiling and I went, oh crap. I think it caught me. It's really cute, and I think it's a good mixture of characters. It's a queer novel and everything. We'll see. I still have like 12 more hours of the audiobook to go. So there's plenty of time for me to go, this is boring. That's a good sign. That's on my actual HTBR. Now, there are these two novels, these paperbacks. We have another blast from my past, and that is Maximum Ride. If you were a child reader during the early 2000s, then you have read this book. You have read this book along with Aragon. The point is, you have read the Maximum Ride series. I ate these up as a kid. I absolutely love them so much. I want to see how it holds up. I want to see if it's still good and if the juice is worth the squeeze on this. I really want to see. And they had it. It was like $3. I said I'm picking it up. I've been wanting to pick it up. I've been going back and forth on getting it. This is on my TBR. I definitely want to read this book, Maximum Ride, Saving the World in Other Extreme Sports, by the end of December. It's a good amount of pages. It's chunky, but the audiobook is only like 4 or 5 hours. Yeah, so I'm excited to read this. Let's hope that it's worth it. And then the second is by Harlan Coben. Tell No One. Suspense at its finest. I picked this up because it had a crazy review of star, like I think it had like nearly 4-star rating on Goodreads. Now keep in mind that VC Andrews Heaven also had nearly a 4-star rating. The Zane I picked up as well at the thrift store also had a 4-star rating. Authenticity Project had a 4-star rating. I probably shouldn't have picked this up considering my track record with finding books at thrift store and them having 4-star ratings, but I didn't. This is on a hope to be read. This is not I'm definitely reading it, but more of a I hope to read it. It's a suspense thriller about, I'm just going to read the back of the book because I really am not sure at this point. For Dr. Beck, the loss was shattering, and every day for the past 8 years he has relived the horror of what happened. The gleaming lake, the pale moonlight, the piercing screams, the night his wife was taken, the last night he saw her alive. Everyone tells him it's time to move on, to forget the past once and for all, but for David Beck, there can be no closure. A message has appeared on his computer, a phrase only he and his dead wife know. Suddenly, Beck is taunted with the impossible, that somewhere, somehow, his wife is alive and he's been warned to tell no one. I don't know. Is she alive? Did she fake her own death? Is he imagining it? Is it him? Anything's possible now. That was enough for me to pick up a $3 book. It's possible. It's possible this will get read. Not certain, but possible. Okay, these last 3 books. One of them will definitely not get read. And that's Rebecca Yarros's Iron Flame. I pre-ordered this book immediately after finishing Fourth Wing because I was amazed by how much I loved Fourth Wing when I am not a fantasy reader. And I loved it. It was amazing. And I pre-ordered this and it came in the mail and I had all intentions of reading it last month. I didn't, and everybody else in the world was reading it. And the reviews started coming in. And my book buddy, Roxanne, who ate it up, was buddy reading it with somebody else, literally said it's not worth it. It was a lot of nothing that was happening. And that worries me considering how thick this is. And that I don't like fantasy. And she's not the only one who said it. So that's even more concerning. This isn't gonna get read. I'm not excited to read it. I am not wanting to end my year reading it. I will start my year with it, but it's not gonna get read right now. That's for certain. It's gonna stay on this TBR shelf. Right here. So there's that. One book that may get read, it's kind of in the same basket as Tell No One, and that's Dreaming of You. It's a novel in verse, so it may get read simply because technically this should be a really easy read. But I bought this book thinking I was really interested in a novel in verse and this author resurrecting Selena and living through her, having these conversations, but also being haunted by her. Then I got home and I read some reviews and it turns out that this author, Melissa Lozada Oliva, she's kind of tried to create a struggle that she's never actually had for herself, and that some people don't appreciate that. It's very problematic. I'm concerned that even I think like the mother, I think Selena's mother like read the novel and didn't too much care for it either. I think I read somewhere. So I've been putting this off, but it's in verse. I need to just knock it out. I need to just find a day where I just have time and just read through it and see what it's about. I think it's really interesting. Been up here for quite some time. I need to read it. I've been taking too long to read it. We'll see if I get to it though. Dreaming of You. And the last book on my hope to read list for December is a book that I know I am going to read. I am absolutely going to read this because I've been meaning to read it. It's Christmas. This is probably the only novel on my whole list that is actually a Christmas novel, and that's Skipping Christmas by John Grisham. The reason why this book, I picked it up, is because I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Christmas with the Cranks. It's got Tim Allen and Jamie Lee Curtis in it. It's hilarious. It's so funny. It's like if you like The Grinch and you like those Grinchy type movies, or even the Santa Claus and everything, you're really gonna love this one because it's a very Grinchy type movie. Very cute, very funny. Basically, a couple, once their daughter leaves to go like in the Peace Corps, and they're like, okay, we're gonna skip Christmas. We're going to save our money and go on vacation for once. But the only way for us to afford this is if we entirely don't do Christmas. We buy nothing. And the entire town basically is like, you've lost your mind, we're not doing that. And it's based off this book. So I found the book at a thrift store, and I picked up the book, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna read this. This was last year. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to definitely read it for Christmas this year because it's Christmas. This is the only Christmas novel I own. I have to read it this month. So that being said, the for sure TBR is Skipping Christmas by John Grisham, Maximum Ride, Saving the World and Other Extreme Sports, A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, and Charlie the Chocolate Factory by Donald Dahl. That is I'm going to read that this month. TBR. My hope to read: Dreaming of You, Tell No One, and to knock out 3 or as many as I can of the Series of Unfortunate Events series books. I am not attempting to read The Other Black Girl or Iron Flame. That is my HTBR for December. I am not attempting to read anything that I have DNF'd because I feel like a DNF needs to have like a couple of months to breathe. I DNF'd Bunny and then came back to it and loved it. That was after like 4, 5, 6 months maybe of me. No, it wasn't that long because I read it earlier this year. I'm lying to myself. I think I waited like 3, 4 months though. Book Eaters, it's just too slow. I need maybe more happening in my everyday life for me to read that book and be like, okay, I can work through it. But right now it's not the time. It was a great reading year so far. Once I finish this next book, I will beat my Goodreads challenge that I made for myself this year. And I think it is absolutely possible for me to go over that goal, which I'm really proud of. I read some great books this year, especially during the second half. The second half really got. First half was a little shaky. I'm not gonna lie, this summer was rough. But, I mean, last month was a great reading month. We're gonna see, there might be some sleepers in this, like, stack that I've just been sitting here just not excited to read, and they're actually great. So, who knows? That is it for today's Vlogmas video. Like I said before, some of them are going to be this, where it's just a little more like relaxed when I'm talking to y'all, but still trying to achieve some of the same content I have been getting y'all. We'll see if that stays. It may be like, yo, no, that's my style, and we're doing that now because it's so much easier for me to edit and I can get it out quicker as opposed to how I was kind of doing it before. Who knows? We will see. Once I edit this, we will see if I'm like, yeah, that looks like a finished video, or if I'm like, no, that's only good for you to do during Vlogmas. But until the next one, let me know what you guys are trying to read this December. Let me know if I'm the only one who basically uses December as the leftover book month. That would be interesting to know. I feel like I can't be alone in that, especially when you have a physical TBR. Like, you don't get antsy seeing all those books. I feel like I get antsy. It's one thing to have a digital TBR, but like, no. So let me know about that. Like, subscribe, because we've got at least, what is today? If today's the 5th, we've got 20 more days of this. We've got 20 more videos to get through for this. So be excited. I know I am excited to see what the possibilities will be, what we come up with. Some of these are going to be stinkers, but there's got to be at least one good video in 20. So until tomorrow, guys. Bye.